Hello, everyone, and welcome to our digital TeachMeet today on UNESCO's World Teacher Day. I'm David Monaghan. I'm the editor for Learning here at BBC Northern Ireland. You're welcome to Tuesday's session, which is all about teacher and pupil mental health and wellbeing. Our first speaker tonight is Dr. Emma Kell. Emma is the author of How to Survive in Teaching Without Imploding, Exploding, or Walking Away, and the co-author of A Little Guide to Teacher Wellbeing and Care. She's also been a teacher for over 20 years with experience in secondary schools. Emma is going to talk about the mental stresses and strains teachers have been dealing with over the last 18 months, and we'll offer some practical tips on how we can all look after ourselves and each other. So, Emma, are you there?
I am.
There you
Good
go.
evening.
I'll pass over to you then.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here for the second year in a row, and how much has passed in the interim. Right, so I have 15 minutes to share with you some of the gems from my research over the past year and what a year it has been. And it's really important, I think, that we take some of the lessons from this year that we've learned about the things that really matter, about the people who love us, about those life and death situations that we've been facing, and about the reason we got into the job in the first place, and really hold those tight. So I'm going to share a number of tips today, this evening. All of them have worked for somebody. Not all of them work for everybody, but they're all based in the research. None of them cost anything to implement, and they're all quick, and they're focused on individuals at all levels in schools. So just a little bit about me for those who don't know me. I wrote my first book, How to Survive in Teaching, in 2018. That came off the back of a challenging period in my career. I've been really blessed in my 23-year career to have mainly worked in organisations where my values were matched and my ethos was completely in line with the ethos of the school. I had a difficult year, decided to shine a light into some of the darker corners of teaching, and then to look at schools which really get it right in terms of retaining and looking after their best teachers. Very proud just last year to have written and published A Little Guide to Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care with my co-author, primary school teacher, Adrian Bethune. The book has become a bestseller, and we are so pleased because arguably teacher wellbeing has never been so important. All of the latest research, all of the latest reports, particularly from organisations like the NFER, tell us that actually unless we're looking after ourselves, unless we're able to self-regulate, unless we're able to show emotional intelligence, then we really aren't in the best position to be teaching our children, so many of whom are so vulnerable at the moment, and don't we know it? I'm also, and I think it's important to mention this, I'm also a mum. I'm also a mum of two wonderful adolescent girls, with all the challenges that brings. My house is a tip. I'm juggling all the time as well. Some of these tips in here aren't easy to keep doing all the time. I don't get it right all of the time, but I try to be a human being first and an educator second. Important to add that I am still a teacher. I teach part-time. I'm very proud to teach in a pupil referral unit in my local area, which is for all the children, well, it is for all the children who are not coping in mainstream school, and that is hugely rewarding. I'm also a coach, and that means that I am working with a number of people both within and beyond education, from new teachers to executive head teachers, and helping them work through and face some of the challenges of the last year and really see their own strength and resourcefulness and the choices that they don't always they have. So first question should maybe be appearing in the chat bar. Oh yes, there it is, just appeared as if by magic. So what does the word well-being mean to you? There was a tweet about 3 weeks ago now, which really made me laugh. Because it just said if one more person mentions the word well-being, and then there was a swear word in there, I'm going to scream. And actually, it can be one of those words that's totally overused. Leadership team to massive panic. What are we doing about well-being? Imagining they need to be doing something extra or something different. It can be used as a tokenistic term. It can be used as a way of sort of fobbing people off. And it's really important that we're clear here as your answers come in now about what we and what I mean when I talk about well-being here. So teaching is a vocational profession. It is something that we are. It's not just something we do, is it? It's something we are. I am the teacher in my village, and I'm very proud to be the teacher in my village. And I get called on for all sorts of different things, as I'm sure you do as well. But I'm a mum first, I'm a wife first, I'm a friend first, I'm a human being first, an amateur couch to 5K runner before I am an educator. And life, I would argue, is always more important than work. Secondly, there can be a conceptualization of well-being which says it's all about the school leaders. It's all about the school leaders having to fix everybody's problems all of the time. I'm working extensively with school leaders, and when you go back into school tomorrow, I would urge you just to check in on your school leaders, because they have had the most extraordinarily difficult year. I know we all have, but all of the research says that that's hit school leaders particularly hard. So it's not just about this hierarchical nature of school systems. It's about how we all behave, how we look after one another, how we talk to our school caretakers and our canteen staff, and how our canteen staff talk to one another. It's about everybody in a school. We are all responsible for modelling and facilitating a culture of true well-being. We're in it together. Thirdly, well-being is sometimes perceived as an excuse not to work hard. I don't believe there's such a thing as a lazy teacher. I've never met one. I believe that if people are struggling in teaching, there are all sorts of reasons for it, but it's not because they don't want to make a difference. Our young people have one bite of the cherry, and don't we know it at the moment? So the best kind of well-being is actually really coming to the end of a week and knowing that we've truly made a difference to those young people. They have one bite of the cherry. Well-being is not an excuse, never an excuse for poor practice. This image here is to represent sustainability. With the educators I'm working with at all levels, many are starting to struggle. There are all sorts of reasons why they're starting to struggle, but many are falling into patterns of working excessively long hours, 10, 12 hours a day, and then another day at the weekend, losing contact with friends and family, often quite tearful when I speak to them. And my question is always to them is, how sustainable is this? What are your friends and family thinking about how you are feeling at the moment? And often the answer is, well, it's not easy. No, of course it's not easy, but life is short, and how sustainable is it to feel stressed and miserable? And it's really important that we recognize those signs and catch them early before we hit crisis point. Well-being is different for each of us. We all have different things that make us happy. I love a good giggle in the staff room, a silly joke, a silly pun. I don't know, just the more silliness, the better for me. But for example, if I'm walking through school on Monday morning and I say good morning to you and you don't respond, then that can really ruin my day. It can ruin my week. And different things affect different people in different ways. So some of us are super organized. I'm sadly not one of them, but some of us are super organized. And if assembly runs on by an extra 3 minutes, that can really mess up their entire sense of control over their day. So really important to acknowledge that things like compulsory yoga for all staff, true story, going to work, because actually what works for one person won't necessarily work for the rest. And the more I think about it, and the more I work in schools and with schools, the more I think that, yeah, the big ideas, the helicopter ideas are really important, aren't they? As to thinking about pride and achievement and sacrifice and love and all of those big ideas. But actually, even more important than the helicopter and those overarching themes that we have in schools is the mosaic, the little things, the way we communicate, whether we say please, sorry, thank you in schools, whether we pay attention to those little bits of communication which might seem insignificant, which might seem boring, but which can really ruin somebody's day if we don't pay careful attention. I'm thinking of things like a last minute change of timetable. I'm thinking of a comment in a meeting where someone feels behind. I'm thinking of an action that someone promises to take and simply doesn't take. And the more I think about it, and the older I get, the more I think that actually reliability, good old-fashioned reliability, is one of the most important traits in our profession. So We think about time management, don't we? We talk about time management a lot, and we know that we are in an era of just information overload, aren't we? And there's loads of data on this about, the amount of information we receive before 8 a.m. is the equivalent to what we might have received in a week before the internet existed. And there's a great book by Graham Alcott called The Productivity Ninja. And he talks instead of time management, he says that's out with the arc now, that's gone. We need to think about attention management, where we choose to place our attention, because we do have choices. This is really important. We have choices. So we can choose to be sucked up by toxic negativity. We can choose to feel frustrated or annoyed, or we can choose to get those feelings out of our system, because it's important that we acknowledge them. All feelings are important, and then focus our attention on what really matters. And that's what I want to talk about in the next couple of slides. There's a link to the book. It's excellent. It's definitely helping me be far more efficient. So Graham says how well you protect and use your attention determines your success. And arguably, you could change the attention for emotional investment, emotional energy, and you could change the word success for happiness. So let's think about where we've been placing our attention over the last 18 months during this ongoing pandemic. And there was a piece of research by the What Works Centre for Wellbeing, which really looked at what helped people get through this period, whether they were in school, whether they were homeschooling, whether they were furloughed, what helped. And it turned out to be the really simple things. Human beings who spent 20 minutes going for a walk, 20 minutes in the garden doing some gardening, 20 minutes reading a book every day. Over the long term, consistently, if they were doing those things, they reported high levels of well-being. Whereas those of us who were glued to the news, and my husband's a journalist, so I can relate, found ourselves dragged away by stories that made us upset or angry. And this was a particular classic. I don't know if it made it as far as Northern Ireland, but this particular classic here was one that had, you just don't know whether to give it oxygen or not, do you? But yeah, teachers doing nothing. That's been a nice theme occasionally in some of the louder elements of the media here. So we can pay attention to the negative things, the things that make us angry, or we can choose to shift our attention to the positive. So things like finding a field, going out for a walk, getting some fresh air, being alone, getting some fresh air. Things like a pile of cats on the sofa in my office, in this room where cats are not supposed to be, just taking a moment to relish those and avoiding that 24-hour news input that can really bring us down. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be watching the news or listening to the news, but I'm saying that we need to think about when we're doing it and the impact that it has on us. I'm not going to play this now because of time, but I am going to signpost it. This is an interview with Professor Dr. Rick Hanson, sorry. Professor Adam Grant-Slater, Dr. Rick Hanson. And Dr. Rick Hanson has written a book called Hardwiring Happiness. And he talks about the way human beings have a negativity bias. And the way he describes it is our brains are like Teflon for the positive, but Velcro for the negative. And this all goes back to human evolution and the fact that we needed to fight predators. We needed sticks to fight predators, but we also needed carrots. But if we didn't get a carrot, you could get one tomorrow. If you didn't get a stick, then you would die. So the human brain is geared for survival, not long-term happiness. So what we need to do is we need to actually just tilt towards the positive, make a conscious effort, acknowledge that that grumpy parent or that colleague who snips at you in the corridor is likely to cast a black cloud over your day, but then focus on the positive. And I'm going to ask each of you to do that now. And I'd like you each to think of one significant achievement or a really small achievement, a compliment that you've received in the last week, something you're really proud of. And while you do that, I'm going to share, and you're going to find this hard, by the way, everyone finds this hard, but I'm going to encourage you to do it. So I think we've got dozens of people on this call, so I expect dozens of responses. I'm going to share with you my jar of marbles. And I've actually got one. I have a jar of marbles. I went to Amazon, I bought marbles. the jar of marbles represents all the lovely things that happen in a person's week. So when a student says to you, Miss, I love your dress, when a student stays behind and confides in you about a problem they've got and allows you to walk with them as they solve that problem. When a parent says thank you for the difference you've made to my child, grab a marble, I dare you. Grab a marble, put it in the jar and watch the jar filling up. So as I continue to talk, I am going to encourage you to share a compliment, share an achievement from the last week, and I will go back at the end and I will be looking for them and I will be reading them. Okay. I have time to share one more main concept with you so that the other speakers actually get a look in. And I would like to share with you the concept of otherishness. Otherishness does indeed come from Professor Adam Grant from Wharton Business School in the US. And he did a study of people in professions where they naturally give a lot. So not just teaching, all sorts of professions, but professions in which people were naturally inclined to want to give of themselves to make a difference. And he came up with this concept of otherishness. He divided people into two main categories: selfless givers and otherish givers. And I want you to have a think about which one applies, which one is most likely to apply to you. Let's have a look at this, because I found this really powerful. So selfless givers are the people who give regardless of purpose. You know, when someone stands up in the staff room and asks for a favor, someone to go on a trip, someone to do an extra break duty, the selfless giver is the person whose hand's halfway in the air before the request has even been completed. They want to help. They really want to help. They can be taken advantage of. So after a while, the selfless giver in the staff room is being asked to do stuff all the time because everyone knows they'll say yes. You know, everyone knows that this person in the staff room will always help out, will do anything for everybody. You know, they're a safe pair of hands. You can always ask them. But what can happen is they start to look around and they start to get tired and they start to get worn out and they think, hang on, why am I doing all of this all of the time? And they can become resentful. And selfless givers, and we all know one, we might be one, over time are more likely, I'm not saying they will, but they are more likely to burn out. They are more likely to go through cycles of making themselves ill or totally exhausted because they have not watched their giving and not taken time to look after themselves. So on the other hand, otherish givers give with a clear sense of purpose. So they do say yes, absolutely they say yes, but they think first. If I say yes to this, how will it help my students? How will it help my family? How will it help me in my career? Will it actually get me a favour in the bank for a time when I need a favour from somebody else? You know, this all sounds a little bit ruthless for those of us with selfless tendencies, but it makes sense. They have boundaries. So they're able to say no, or if not no, then they're able to say, not now, not today, or look, this is what's on my plate. Yes, I'll do what you're asking me to do, but what can you take off my plate instead? Selfless givers can look ahead by a week, by 2 weeks, and say, goodness me, I've got a really challenging week that week. I'm not going to say yes to anything else. Or they can look at their week and they say and you'll go to them and you'll ask them to do something on a Saturday and they'll say, I'm not doing a Saturday because that's my time for the people who love me. And overall, their giving is sustainable. They are more likely to give more over time. That is my 15, 20 minutes up, and I want to give the other speakers a chance to speak. There's a bit more in there, as you can see, but I am going to share with you my contact details. I'd love to hear from you. I do come into schools. I do have a bit of capacity left for the rest of this academic year if you'd like me to come to your school, but do feel free to get in touch. You can also find me on Twitter. There, 2 minutes over.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Emma. It was great.